Hello, ladies and gentlemen. What I want to share with you today is some findings from hockey's global research study. It is the largest and most substantial study that hockey has ever undertaken. So the first question I guess you're going to say is, why did hockey undertake this study? What were we trying to achieve? And what were we trying to uncover? The first thing we really needed to know, who are our audiences? What are they like? How do they behave? How do they perceive hockey now? How do we compare with other sports? Do you know, we didn't really know that. Since commencing this study, we really wanted to understand what are the differences across these markets. Now, since I started getting involved with hockey, I've heard numerous people say, my market's different. It's not like that in my market. Well, today we're going to find out what those differences are. And thirdly, we really wanted to understand, what is it that actually unites hockey? What is it across all our markets and across the globe that is that sweet spot, that universal truth that applies no matter where you are in the world? We want to understand, regardless of the country, the market, what holds true globally, what is our universal truth on this planet. So, how do we conduct this study? It was a very substantial study. It was a broad exploratory study, what we sort of like to call a hockey state of the nation. It was designed to provide a base understanding of hockey, its perceptions globally, and identify these key cohesion points for us to develop a brand around. There were more than 85 countries that participated in this study, and there were more than 4,000 online interviews with our hockey audience. And these interviews were distributed through our FAH and National Association social media channels. In addition to this, we also completed more than 1,600 online interviews with general sports fans in 6 key markets in particular, which were Holland, India, Australia, Argentina, and South Africa. The findings we're going to present to you today represent findings from across all of our countries that participated in this survey. So why should you believe the findings, I guess you're going to say to me? The thing is, what I'm going to present to you today may not match exactly what you believe the perception of hockey is today. But in this particular case, perception is reality. There's no denying that there are differences across our markets. But the good news is there's also some universal truths that we can build a go-forward brand around. What I'm going to present to you first today is who we describe as our hockey audiences. And there are 3 of these. After this session, you're going to be presented with 3 sheets, which is a profile of each of these 3 hockey audiences. But for the purposes of now, I want to briefly take you through the key points around these groups. Our first audience is who we're defining as our hockey fanatics. And everyone in this room will be very familiar with who this person is. These people are pretty much 50-50 male-female. And they are young. So Jenny Mann was talking about the fact that IOC are trying to target young people. Well, let me tell you, our hockey fanatics, from the research that we conducted, they're younger than most team sports. Nearly 60% of them are under the age of 24 years of age. And these people are highly passionate. They absolutely love hockey. They love it. They love how fast it is. They love the moves. They love the team spirit, the fact that it is for everyone. It's a true body and mind immersion. These people also recognize there's some weaknesses with hockey. A big thing that comes out is the fact that there's a lack of TV coverage. Some of them believe that the cost of the equipment's a bit expensive. There's also this perception out there, and this is what they think is a weakness for the game, that there's been some constant rule changes which makes it hard for other people to perhaps understand the sport properly. What's interesting about these rule changes is that the players themselves think the rule changes have really improved the game. They love them. They've made it faster and more skillful. But they're wondering if they've made it more difficult for other people to watch the sport. They also perceive that perhaps the sport is perceived as a bit dangerous and there's a risk of injury. Because our fanatics are so young, social media is really important to this audience. The way they like to consume information is very social media driven. So you can see from this diagram, 78% of them use Facebook on a regular basis. They love YouTube, and interestingly, because this is such a young audience, they love Instagram. The one thing I want to talk about with this audience is the fact that they have this deep sense of belonging with hockey. It provides them with their teammates, and they just feel this sense of deep connection with the sport and everything around it. Next slide, please. So because I know all of you are familiar with this fanatic, I'm going to give you a bit of a test. In front of you, you have 3 cards: a pink card, a yellow card, and a blue card. I've got a question for you. How many days a week do you believe hockey fanatics actually play hockey? Who believes it's twice a week? I can see a yellow. Where are your cards? Cards up. Yellow cards. Lots of yellows over here, a few blues. No pinks. A couple of pinks. What's the answer, Catherine? 3 times a week. Can you see how fanatical this audience are? They are down at the hockey pitch 3 days a week. They love it. Another question for you. Do hockey fanatics see themselves as trendsetters? When you're down at the pitch, do you think these people are trendsetters? Do they see themselves this way? Who thinks yes? Yes? Yes, lots of yellow cards. Who thinks no? A few no's. Yes. Believe it or not, 1 in 4 of our fanatics see themselves as trendsetters. Sorry, 1 in 5. And in South Africa, 1 in 4. 25% of our fanatics see themselves as trendsetters. Now that was unexpected. The second audience I want to introduce you to are who we're calling our hockey enthusiasts. These people skew slightly older than our fanatics. You can see here that, we've got 43% of them are between the ages of 24 and 44. We still have a big group under the age of 24, 22%. They tend to be slightly more male. They're basically our hockey fanatics, and they've got a bit older. What they love about hockey, again, is the community around it. They love watching the awe of the game and the skill of the combination of speed and skill combined. It's awe-inspiring for this audience. They're still down at the hockey pitch a lot, maybe not quite as much as our fanatics, but this time they come as a parent, as a coach, as an administrator, and some of them still also play in our masters. They also see hockey as having similar weaknesses to our fanatics. You can see because they are slightly older, some of the ways they like to view hockey are slightly different from a social media perspective. They still like Facebook and they still like YouTube. Instagram's not so important for them. But interestingly, they really like to get information through Twitter. What I want to say about both of these audience groups, and what I really want you to pull from today, is these groups are in. They feel a connection, a deep sense of belonging. They love hockey. For them, the sport is fantastic. The community is fantastic. It gives them friends for life. And we're doing lots of things right. But I want to introduce you to our third audience. Or before I do that, though, let's ask some questions about these guys. What percentage of hockey enthusiasts do you still think play? Over 50%? Over 70? Well, mixed response on this one. What is the answer, Catherine? Over 70%. Over 70%. It's high. But what this tells us, at the moment, our fan base are our players. And I guess you'll say no surprises there. But if we only focus on talking to our players, it's very difficult for us to extend and spread the love and the word of hockey. Another question for you. Is it true that over 40% of our hockey enthusiasts have children who play hockey? Who agrees? Yes. We've all seen that. Is it true? Yes. We see generations of hockey people coming through. They love it. They want to pass that love on to their children. They want to watch their children play. They want to be there with their friends and talk about hockey and watch hockey and be involved in hockey every week. But what about our third audience? We've called these our general sports fans. And I want you to really listen about this audience because this audience is important. We have two audiences already. These are our player fans. But we also need to reach a spectator fan. And this is described as our general sports fan. Now, when we did the research, when we interviewed these general sports fans, these were people who were actively engaged in sport and watching it on a weekly basis. They follow it. They love sport. And so we were asking them, okay, how do you feel about hockey? What do you like? So I can tell you what this audience looks like. They are older than our Fanatics. You can see here that there's, over 40% of them are 45 years or older. There's a big group of them, they're between the ages of 24 and 44 years of age. But the big thing with this audience is how they like to consume sport, what they're looking for, what makes them like watching these games. So like our Fanatics and our Enthusiasts, they also agree, and what they like about hockey is the pace and skill of the game. They see our sport as physically demanding and involving a full team. And they love that. They really do. But they also have some perceptions about what's not so great about hockey. They see that it could be quite rough and dangerous. And for many of them, particularly those that aren't as familiar with the sport, they can see it as boring with too many stops and starts. They don't understand what's going on. They sort of see it as low profile. I don't know when it's on. And who plays? I don't know the names of these wonderful players. Who are they? I don't know their names. I can't talk about them with my friends. I don't know who they are. This audience, for them, sport is a social activity. They want to do it in a social environment, on public screens. They want to talk about their favorite players, the statistics of the sport. They want to get in. At the moment, they're on the out. Our Fanatics and Enthusiasts, they're in. They're in this group. It's inclusive. They feel a sense of belonging. But this general sports fan, how do they get in? At the moment, we make it very difficult for them to get in. For hockey to grow, we need to positively influence more than 60% of this audience. which is a big number. As you can see from this chart, around 40% of them at the moment are open to hockey if it's put in front of them. That's good news. Another third of them need to be convinced. Oh, I know about hockey. Yeah, it's okay. You haven't given me anything yet that makes me want to really sit down and watch it or get inspired by it or become a regular follower of it. But for a quarter of them, they outright reject the sport. They need something disruptive. They need something different to get them to take a second look at hockey. Another quiz. You're getting quite good at these. For the general sports fan around the world, what percentage of them named hockey as their favourite? Note the word favourite sport. Blue. We've got a room of blues, and you would be right. Now, the good news is that 15% of them were fans of the sport, but disappointingly, only 2% of them saw it as their favourite sport. When you contrast that with how in love our fanatics, our enthusiasts are with the game, you can see we've still got a bit of work to do in this revolution. If we make general sports fans more familiar with hockey, do you think they're going to like it more or less? More. And you're right. And do you know what? This is good news for us because I've just presented a very disappointing chart, but this is good news. Over 60% of them say the more familiar they are with the game, the more they love it. So what that tells us is that if we can get hockey in front of them, packaged right, on a regular basis, when they know it's on, we give them stars, we give them stats, we give them things to talk about, they are going to love it. They've already told us that. And that is great news for us. I want to talk now about likability. Not just likability of our sport, but what grows likability for a sport? What is important to people when they think about sport? What makes them want to watch it more? And what's really interesting about this is how this changes depending on who the audience is. So our hockey fanatics, now remember these are our players, these are our player fans. What they like the most about sport is the skill level, the adrenaline of the game, and the speed of the game. But what's interesting, as our audience move further away from being players and more spectators, what drives likability for a sport changes. Look how important the quality of the international competitions become. It's the second most important thing for our enthusiasts and the third most important thing for our general sports fans. What about how important watching with friends and family is? For our general sports fan audience, the social currency side of sport, the ability to talk about it, interact with it with their friends, watch it on public screens, this is what they need. This is how they can engage with our game. At the moment, there's very few opportunities for them to do that. Interestingly, skill is universally accepted across all our audiences as driving likability. But what it tells us is how we've been positioning hockey so far is speaking to our current player fan base, and we need to start talking to our general sports fan base as well. What I'm putting in front of you now is what we like to call a mapping diagram. And what it does is it likes to map on a chart the perceptions of hockey against drivers of likability. So these are how people perceive the sport and how those perceptions, how important are these in terms of driving likability? Now, our objective is to have as many of these things in the green box. We need to tick that big green box. So what do we own at the moment? We own skill, speed, and adrenaline. And that's great. Our perceptions are high around these things, and they're high drivers of likability. But there's some other things that are really important to driving likability, which look where they sit in the perceptions of hockey. Atmosphere at live events, international competitions, the ability to watch with friends and family, and the ease of understanding. So what that tells us is that hockey is perfectly positioned. They're kind of predisposed to loving this sport, but we've got to move into the green box. So we've already said there are differences around the world. And for those of you who are attending the clinics later today, we're going to go into these in a lot more detail. But I just wanted to quickly highlight some of those differences here today. Now, what we did with the 6 markets that we'd chosen, we wanted to make sure that we'd chosen a market in each across the whole 5 Continental Federations. But you can see there are differences. For example, Argentina is seen as more high adrenaline and inclusive, and it was the most family-focused market of all the markets. It was also seen as the most professional. England was seen as progressive, but it was also seen as a little bit elitist and as a second-tier sport. The Netherlands was seen as very social and very innovative, but there was definitely an exclusiveness in this market, an eliteness to the game. India, it wasn't a family game really at all. It was more about innovation, progressiveness, a passion, and a win focus. It was about national pride. In South Africa, it was about fun, progressiveness, but it was also the market that was seen as being the most boring by general sports fans. And then we've got Australia, which was more inclusive and family focused, but it was definitely seen as a second-tier sport, and it was seen as the most complicated to follow of all the markets. But there are 3 things that hockey owns across all audiences and across all markets. These are universal truths, and we know they drive likability as well. It is the skill, the speed and intensity of the game, the combination of these 2 things, and this deep sense of connection. Now, I know you might say to me, well, other sports have these things as well. But what Rich is going to demonstrate to you in his positioning work is that hockey owns these 3 areas more than any other team sport. So in summary, what I want you to get out of today is that hockey is strong in the individual, family, and team area. Our fans, our fanatics and our enthusiasts, our player fans, they love us. We're doing lots of things right. They feel a deep sense of connection, and they're not going anywhere. But where we need to improve is when we start moving into the wider community. We're missing bringing hockey to life. We're missing engendering passion in this wider community. And as we move out to the sports fan, we have low profile. There's a real lack of social currency. They have nothing to talk about. And they don't know who our players are. So the key things I want you to leave with today is that hockey is well positioned to move forward. We have a young and dynamic player-based audience. Our fanatics and our enthusiasts love us, and they're in. But we have another audience, our general sports fan, who we have to engage with, who currently are out. We need to give them ways to come in. Now, some of the strategies we're implementing are going to do that. We're introducing the Hockey Fives game, which is going to be disrupting and different. We're changing our event portfolio, international competitions. We're creating stars. Suddenly they'll know who these wonderful people are. We need to make them famous. And more, we're becoming broadcast on more and more channels around the world. We end up in the pubs, in the bars. You'll be able to go down and you will see hockey and people will love it. We need to grow more social currency. We need to make people feel differently about hockey if we're going to grow outside our player fan base. TV is very important, but it is not the only solution. We need to make the game more approachable. We need to better showcase what makes hockey special. It is magical. The way the ball can move at such pace and be delivered with such high skill. No other sport delivers that. Plus, the good news is our audience is young. They're young and they are dynamic and they are embracing social media. So these channels remain absolutely critical to us. But for the first time, we've really got a clear path. We know across all your markets here today, we know what it is that unites hockey globally, what it is that drives likeability, and how we can position hockey as a brand. Skill, speed, and belonging is what hockey owns. And you'll see in the presentation that Richard Tattershaw is about to present to you now, is that we're going to find a way to position that and make everyone fall in love with hockey. Richard. Oh, Catherine's got it.
I think so. Howdy. That's pretty cool, wasn't it? So to extend the conversation from the excellence, or those slightly slanderous stuff, Simon, with regards to the All Blacks, but I appreciate you just trying to be balanced, so I think that's good. And that terrific research work, what we're now going to do is take you through some of the work that we're doing around the branding of hockey. Now, I think it's really important that we just almost demystify the notion of branding. And I think Simon went a long way to discussing that. It's not a label on a piece of packaging. It's actually what we're about. What does it mean to be connected to something? It's, remember, and I think it was very well articulated, it's the idea of the emotional values that something has. So please, when we think about that. So following that brilliant and insightful research, we now know much more about hockey and what the market thinks about hockey. The market, the players, coaches, and general sports fans. The challenge now is to take that research and to create and communicate something that is special and unique about hockey, and that is something special and unique about hockey across the globe. Now, this is a wonderful project, because what it does, and hopefully for everybody here as well, it allows us to think deeply about the game that we care about. There's nothing better than spending time and thinking and understanding and trying to be as creative and interesting as we can about the game that we love. Well, the first thing actually, as part of sort of the brand work, is actually to create a clear separation between the FIH and hockey. Kids do not play FIH. Kids play hockey in the backyard. They grab a stick, they grab a ball, they go out the back, and they smash it against a fence. And that's fantastic. So within our work around branding, what we have to also do is establish the role of the FIH. The FIH's role is to be the international governing body, to be respected, to provide the governance, to provide the leadership, and to be almost an endorsement, a seal of quality on certain products and activities. But hockey is our hero. Hockey is our hero. And we want to capture the universal experience and truths around that game. So why do we actually even spend time thinking about this? Why do we need a positioning? Why do we need a brand? Well, because on Tuesday nights in the middle of winter, 3 times a week, on Tuesday nights in the middle of winter, it can often be cold and wet and raining. Certainly where I come from, it can be. Because it takes an awful lot of patience when you have a group of 5-year-olds running around to convince them that that stick is not a lightsaber. Because we want our children and our grandchildren to play. But not just that, we want other people's children and grandchildren to play, and we get pleasure from that as well. Because essentially, hockey is love. It is top priority for hockey folks on what they love to do with their lives. And we want to share that love. But as described by Raywin, it's a secret. It's almost our own secret. Now, as we start to grow the hockey revolution, hockey gains more visibility, gains more momentum. The secret's out. And so as the secret comes out, we have to know and will benefit from knowing what we're going to communicate. How do we go about communicating the truths of our game that the research has done so well to discover? The building a brand, how do we build a brand? This is a relatively typical way, shortened down of course, how you would build a brand. We define our story, we magnify our message, and we speak with one voice. These are the mechanics of building pretty much any brand, but we may be the first sport to be trying to do it to define our sport, our activity. What a revolutionary idea that is, that we're going to try and do that. First, you must define your story. What is unique about the activity, about our sport? But also, what is the common thread? What's the through line? What's the narrative that holds hockey together across the world? And Raywin talked about that. Secondly, you must magnify your message. We must think big and do big things. We do not whisper it anymore. We must make it memorable and proud. We must make it big, bold, and loud. And then speak with one voice. When the hockey community, all of us, the millions of people around the world, start to say the same thing, start to talk, that will be powerful. When the people that are in start telling the people who are out about what we know, that will be very powerful. So we start doing that. And remember, a revolution is not a quiet activity. So let's make some noise. So how do we use it? I was thrilled with Simon's presentation. It worked quite smoothly, actually, so I'm glad you said the things that you did. It's how do we use the brand, and please think how Simon positioned it. You use your positioning, your ideas, and your value. If you get it right, you use it to judge all your activities against, all your innovations, all your initiatives. And the reason you do that, because if you've got it right, and the research has helped, it's the inherent truth that you're communicating. You may magnify the message, that's okay. But you're speaking the inherent truths. And you're discovered them and you're proposing them. Now, if we've discovered the inherent truths, therefore our activities and our considerations and our thoughts should be judged against those. Because that is what lives within here, within the hockey heart. Now, at a practical level, it will give us language. It will affect the visual way we present the game. It will inform the television production. It will inform Andy's television production. It will hopefully stimulate hockey lifestyle products. It will give you the language when you go and talk to local media, maybe when you go and talk to international media. And it will certainly give you language and a point of view when you go and talk to parents on the sideline. So that's where it lives. Following on from Raywin, where do we win? Well, to understand where we win, we have to look at our competitors. And this room is certainly full of competitive people, so I think you'll enjoy doing that. I still carry a few scars from trying to tackle Michael Green to understand how competitive hockey can be. So let's have a little look where we stand. This is a positioning map for the research that we did that charts the favorite words for sports fans for their sport, how they described their sport. So this is, if I'm a fan of cricket, this is how I described cricket. Comes from our research. So it's how fans of these sports see their sport. Now, clearly, this is not about market size. Football has more players. This assumes that the marketplace, the market size is equal, so it is all relative. So what we see here, so the question was, what are the words that best describe your sport? Now, you'll see here, which I think is interesting, is that volleyball, and Simon referenced volleyball, which is also smooth of us in our presentations. Volleyball, in the research, volleyball folks identify that it is a fun and social activity, insofar as it presents that to them more than other sports to the other fans of those other sports. That's what they see. Probably follows in interestingly on that family focus thing they talked about. Rugby fans, rugby people identify their sport as being more high adrenaline than fans of other sports identify high adrenaline as a trait of their sport. Football, not surprisingly, seen as the greatest outlier of professional. And cricket, quite interestingly, is seen by cricket fans as capturing the glamorous market. Raywin talked about disruption. How disrupting has 2020 cricket been? Almost off the chart seismic for that sport. So let's add hockey to the map. It's the work that, the visualization of the work that Raywin talked about. This is what hockey people identify about hockey. So you see, we have a greater level of identification around skill and speed, and that crosses also into that high energy space. So we're the filled in color. This is what the market is telling us. So you can see our weaknesses, and you can also see, which is as Raywin presented, that our fans, our players, get a greater sense of belonging. They identify belonging as being a stronger attribute for hockey than other sports and people who are involved in other sports. So how does that feel? I imagine it probably feels pretty good. Raywin talked about it. It feels good because the market's told us. It feels good to me. So when I take commercial guests to the Champions Trophy in London, they're on the edge of their seat because they often turn up with no appreciation of hockey or an old appreciation of hockey. And let's be very clear that our revolution involves the game, the spectacular game now, and the attitudes of the game now. And our brand positioning is a key part of that. The people I take as guests are on the edge of their seat. They cannot believe the speed and skill. How can this not be more popular? How can it not be more popular? And I'm sure you've all had that same experience. And belonging, as we have identified it, is very powerful. And we see it as more than a family sport. We see the idea of belonging within hockey as a deeper idea. A big heart, a respectful place where boys, girls, men, women, young and old, newcomers, and families where the hockey stick is handed down from generation to generation, are welcomed and respected. That is how we see the sense of belonging, how it comes through. So having discovered all of that, the research, how do we now go and externalize that? How do we take the brand? There's no point having a brand and just keeping it in the cupboard, an activity. We really don't want to have people who are in and people who are out and a hard line down the middle. So our challenge is, and this is the first step on that project for FIH, and there's much more to come and much more to be revealed in the work that we're doing. But how do we create that brand position, and how do we then communicate it with one voice? Well, at our heart, in the heart of hockey is something that is unique, powerful, and important. It is something that sits at the heart of our game, but not only that, is a key benefit that we offer to the world in general. Now, all of you here believe that the world is better with sport in it because of the values it teaches.